Yeah, I think in the beginning, one thing that a lot of companies do wrong with their go-to-market strategy is that they try to focus on too many things at the same time. Founders need to realize that your first $1 million can come from just 200 companies that you can write down on a piece of paper and say that, you know what, out of these 200, I'll close 30, 40, 50, 100, depending on what your, ACV is, and get your first $1 million just from there. So I think being very focused, being laser focused on who do you want to sell to is extremely important from a go-to-market strategy standpoint, when you're starting up.
Hello and welcome to the Startup Operator podcast. I'm Roshan Karyappa. If you're interested in learning more about scaling the go-to-market function, you're in for a treat. This is a masterclass. On this episode, I speak to Anupreet Singh, who is a GTM leader at Sixth Sense and a venture partner at Gemba Capital. Anupreet has built and scaled GTM teams that have generated millions of dollars in revenue. And in this conversation, I speak to him about the various facets of a GTM function: how to hire, enable, and scale SDR, AE, growth, and customer success teams, how to sell from India to the US and beyond, and how to build a technology stack that supports all of this. This is a super insightful episode, and you might find this useful. So let's get started. Hey, Anupreet, welcome to the Startup Operator podcast. Thank you so much for making the time.
Hey Roshan, thanks for having me.
It's been a while since we had an operator on the podcast. We've only had founders for a long time. And, really excited to be talking to you about something that is of a lot of interest to our listeners as well, which is, figuring out go to market and scaling sales and marketing. So, really excited to talk to you today. Anupreet, I mean, to begin with, right? I mean, you've been in SaaS for a while. How have you seen the go to market function evolve over the years? What does this function or multiple functions look like right now?
Yeah, so around 5 to 7 years back, most of the go-to-market functions were more majorly focusing on field marketing, field sales, not optimizing a lot on Google Ads, not optimizing a lot for virtual events, not optimizing a lot on their social media handles. So the way go-to-market has evolved in the last 5 to 7 years is that they've moved to more digital side of the world. Everything that we see today is optimized for online first, be it your talent of account executives or be it your sales development representatives being coming into picture, cold calling becoming a thing in India. All of that actually happened in the last 5 to 7 years. Earlier, if you think of a SaaS company or at large any technology company, they would go to events heavily. They would invest, a lot on their field sales team. They would invest a lot on their relationships of the founders, of the sales leaders. You would try to hire people who are from the same domain and all. I think all of that has changed by a lot in the last 5 to 7 years, wherein you're optimizing to hire people who have been there, done that at large in the SaaS industry and not probably in specific verticals, because that it's very agile now from for a person to move from vertical A to vertical B, and similarly a marketer to market a sales tech product and then market an HR tech product, etc. It's pretty much possible because of how digital things have become in the last few years. So I think the biggest change that I've seen in go-to-market functions is that everyone is optimizing for online first, digital first versus field first, which used to be a thing back in the day.
Yeah, I think a couple of things that you brought up are interesting. One is this move from field to desk, right? From A's to SDRs, basically. And the second thing that you kind of alluded to is the fact that, various functions are also bleeding, right? I mean, today, the difference between sales and marketing, right? I mean, it's kind of bleeding. An SDR has to have a good handle on what kind of campaigns are being run, how leads are generated, and so on. And at the same time, a marketer has to close a loop with the SDR in terms of what kind of quality their leads are and so on, right? So that is, I think, an interesting aspect as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think ABX is the future, wherein you everything that marketing is doing, SDRs are benefiting from it. Everything that SDRs are doing, they're also creating a brand presence for you. They're helping you with brand awareness every time they make a cold call and tell them that they're calling from a certain company. Every time they send this cold email or send a LinkedIn message, they're talking about your brand. So there's no way that you can work independently anymore. It has to be a collaborative effort. So I see a lot more marketers helping SDRs with their cold calling messaging. I see a lot of product marketers helping AEs with their pitch because they want the pitch to be a certain way. They want the same kind of messaging to go out, in the market about their brand. So, and everything has to be controlled in a way that, the company, right from your SDR to account executive to customer success manager to founder is talking about the same story. And so, you can't put efforts in silos and be successful. You have to be like collaborative in the way you approach things. Personally, I've seen many organizations having marketers train their account executives at multiple points of their journey, tell them about a certain product feature that has been launched instead of the product team doing that. By which I mean, product team has launched a feature, but now marketers want to market it in a certain way. And so account executives must hear that feature update from the marketers and not product people, because then if product team is giving them an update on a certain new feature, then everyone will perceive it in a certain way, and then pitch it in a certain way. But if it's controlled by the marketing team, it is actually, pretty consistent across different functions in the go to market team. So yeah, you're right. Teams have started working a lot more collaboratively in the last
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we'll talk about, the kind of teams that we have to hire and how they're structured and so on. But, the old spiel of sales and marketing never getting along or not being on the same page or running in two different directions, and this whole animus between these two functions, right? In terms of, hey, you're useless, you can't follow up with my leads, to versus, saying that, hey, your leads are like complete crap. And, that kind of animus doesn't exist so much. There's always some healthy friction, which I think is necessary, but I don't think the old world sales and marketing running separate lines is relevant, at least in a hyper growth SaaS company these days. Let's talk about, some of the essentials of building a good GTM motion, right? I mean, it's something like it's a North Star for any startup, right? I mean, if there's an early stage or even a growth stage founder who's kind of listening to this, they want to figure out what is the best way and the fastest way to get to the source of truth, right? How do I build this engine, right, where I'm generating leads and I'm also converting a good portion of them into customers, and then nurturing them beyond that, right, to expansion and so on. So in your opinion, what are some of the basics of go to market motion? What are the fundamental building blocks of this?
Yeah, I think in the beginning, one thing that a lot of companies do wrong with their go-to-market strategy is that they try to focus on too many things at the same time. So, I hear founders saying that, we'll begin with EMEA and North America as a region of focus, or, we'll begin with APAC as a region, and, from a company size, we're focusing on enterprise and mid-market to begin with. And that's it. That's their TAM, right? I mean, so I think founders need to realize that your first $1 million can come from just 200 companies that you can write down on a piece of paper and say that, what, out of these 200, I'll close 30, 40, 50, 100, depending on what your, ACV is, and get your first $1 million just from there. So I think being very focused, being laser focused on who do you want to sell to is extremely important from a go to market strategy standpoint, when you're starting up. And I believe in this theory of, focusing on one ICP. When I say one ICP, I mean one persona in specific. So you can't even say sales in my book of rules, right? You have to say, if you're a sales tech product, are you focusing on account executives, SDRs, or VP of sales? Who are you selling to? Who is this product for? Who will be the user of this product? You need to be as specific as that. And when I say one geo, I don't mean APAC as a geo. I mean India as a geo, or Singapore as a geo. Or if you're focusing on North America, be focused on US. And then within that, when you say, when I talk to you about size, you can't say enterprise and mid market. You have to say, companies between 50 and 500 employees. You have to be like as specific as you can get, right, in terms of your go to market strategy. And when you do that, right, you'll realize that you'll make a lot more friends in the company. And what do I mean by that? Your product team will be happier because now you're not, pulling them in 10 different directions. Your marketing team will be happier because you're not changing your strategy every now and then and saying that, hey, we'll go to this event which is enterprise heavy, and then we'll also do this, Sequoia search campaign wherein, all the startups are coming up, and we want to do something for the search founders as well. So, you'll know if you want to focus on search founders or do you want to go to this enterprise heavy event, which is happening maybe in San Francisco. So your marketing team will also know what your priorities are and who do they need to, present your product. So, and then you need to have one differentiator. I mean, you can't go to market, you can't have a product market fit without having at least one differentiator against your competitors if you're already going into the market, which is already, established by your competitors. So you need to be sure that you have at least one massive differentiator against your competitors right from the get-go. But again, you can't spread like very wide there as well. By which I mean, when I say, you have to have one specific product feature, you can't expect your product team to build like a much better product than your competitors, right? It is impossible for your 4-member engineering team to code a product that will be much better than your competitors. All you need to do is have one differentiator and just make sure that, you're talking about it everywhere that you go. So one thing that we did pretty well in our Slintel journey was that we made sure that that differentiator is technographics. Everywhere we went, people started talking about the fact that, yeah, oh, Slintel, the company that has great technographics. And by the time we hit our $1 million, even our competitors knew Slintel as a company that has a good sales intelligence product, but great technographics, right? So you need to make sure that you talk about it so many times, every time you're speaking to your prospects, your customers, your investors, your product team, your engineering team, your sales and marketing, customer success team. You're just making sure that you keep beating the drum around the fact that one of your product features is so much better than all the other competitors. And that just one extra feature is enough to take you to that $1 million in that one geography and to that one ICP. And you'll do it a lot more peacefully as against doing it with 5 different personas, 5 different product features, and 5 different geographies that you'll be focusing on otherwise.
Yeah. No, so let's delve deeper on that because I think you brought up a couple of very important and yet counterintuitive points, right? So, one is that I think during the discovery phase, during the 0 to 1 phase, founders especially are like, notorious for this, right? Saying that I need to get 10 logos. I don't care where it comes from. So, I'm just going to be everything to everyone, right? I mean, everything is malleable at that point of time. But I think it's chaos, right? I mean, when you're running in like 40 different directions, and especially when you have to coordinate between, 5 or 10 or 15 people, it gets like really out of hand, right? So I think you have to go narrow to go faster, because I think the first order of business for any go to market function is to get this repeatable sales motion going, right? I mean, who is my customer, what is their burning pain point, and how am I solving it for them, right? And I mean, we've had Jen Abel on the podcast a couple of times before, and she makes the point as well on selling to that very narrow ICP, and getting a repeatable sales motion going. The second point that you made also, which is super interesting, is in some sense problem statement greater than product, right? I mean, which is the value proposition that you mentioned, right? What is that one specific problem that you're solving for the client, and how can you hammer it like in 50 different ways, right? It may not be the current version of the product that will solve that. Maybe, I mean, you will have to take like two iterations further, but then I mean, what is that unique problem statement, right? That you stand for and that you want to solve for as well. And again, I mean, some of
And
the
that others are not solving for the way you are. I mean, you need to be solving that problem better than anyone else, but just that one specific problem. Don't try to shoot for a product that is better than the existing product. You won't be able to get there. You'll be lying to yourself, you'll be lying to your customers, you'll be lying to your prospects when you say that you're so much better than the product that has been in the market for the last 10 years. It's just not possible with five engineers that you have.
No, absolutely right. And I think, especially founders who are engineers will think it's scandalous to say that, they can't build this stuff, right? I mean, they can't hack things together. But I think it's important to understand that niche a little better than, say that, hey, I mean, I've architected the most amazing product, and now just go and sell what it does, right? I mean, that doesn't work like that quite as much. So let's get down to the nuts and bolts of it, right? So I want to build this go to market function. I have a clear idea of, who to solve for. Who do I hire first on my team, right? Who do I hire next? When do I hire these people, in what sequence? And how do I kind of enable them? How do I bring this whole AE plus SDR plus marketing mix together?
Yeah, good question actually, and I think this is another area wherein most struggle a lot and make a lot of mistakes in the beginning. So I think your first 10 to 20 customers, I would say, depending on the size of your deals, first $100,000 should be coming from founder-led sales. By which I mean, you need to have your founder selling to each and every prospect. It probably needs to come from founders network. All the leads, all the opportunities need to be created out of the founders network, etc. But as you're doing this, right, you need to make sure that you make notes of things that are working out and things that are not working out. So your first version of your deck, your sales deck, is also being created when you're doing those first 20, 25, 30 demos and selling to that first 100K worth of business. By which I mean, when your first account executive, your first SDR is hired, you shouldn't just ask them to prepare the deck from the scratch. You should transfer all the knowledge that you've gained while selling to the first 20 customers. And when I say first 20 customers, I mean 20 paying customers. There could be a lot of, friends and family folks that are using your product for free. If you make the mistake of giving your product out to customers that were using it for free and then suddenly expect your account executive to do like $30,000 per month, you are being unfair to your account executive. There's no way that he can do account $30,000 worth of business if you couldn't do that, before you got started, no matter how good the salesperson is. So you need to just, make sure that you have some kind of foundation laid out for the first batch of salespeople that you hire. And once you have that right, I think things become a lot easier. You can tell your first account executive that, hey, you know what, I'm averaging around $20,000 per month. All I expect from you is to try to match that for the first 3 months. That's your target for the first 3 months. Consistently hit $20,000. And hey, by the way, I was sourcing my own leads, but I also have an SDR for you to do that now. And give the same kind of SDR knowledge transfer to the first SDR and tell him or her to try to do exactly what you were doing. Give him or her the cold messages that you have been using to get to those first 10, 20 meetings. Maybe give him or her your login credential. I'm not sure if I should be saying this in the podcast, but it's not unusual for first SDR to have founders login credentials of LinkedIn and acting as the founder to pitch the product on the behalf of the company. And all of these hacky things just speed up your road to first $1 million, because imagine an SDR trying to get a meeting for a company that no one knows, but a founder has some kind of brand to himself or herself. You can probably use that brand to get those first meetings, and obviously you won't have that bandwidth, so your SDR could act as you to get those first few meetings, and then take that conversation from there. And once you think you're averaging your first SDR, your first account executive is able to get you consistent revenue, that is the time to scale this team up and also hire the sales head. So I think at somewhere around $200,000 to $50,000, you should be looking at hiring your sales head, and expect the sales head to accelerate things for you. So hire a lot faster, train a lot faster, and then reach to the $1 million goal that you have within the stipulated time that you kept for yourself in the beginning. And all of that is possible only if you give this sales head some kind of machinery that is working, because otherwise, again, it's very difficult to be patient with a person who's probably in the range of, let's say, 1 CR kind of salary in India, right? Or $200,000 of salary in US. You can't be patient with this person if he or she is not delivering. And so you need to make sure that you have some kind of foundation laid out. You've done your diligence before hiring this person, and now you start hitting the pedal, and you accelerate very, very fast and reach that $1 million goal. And it's a peaceful situation to be in for everyone, you as a founder and him or her as a sales leader for your company. So I think that's extremely important. You should be conscious about the fact that you have some kind of machinery running when you hire your sales head. And I think right when you hire your sales head and the sales head is coming to join you, you should start looking for your marketing head as well, because your $1 million can potentially happen without a strong marketing team, but your $5 million can definitely not happen without having your marketing team in place before the first million is hit. By which I mean, right when you're around 500K, 700K, your marketing team should already be there, starting to set up your website with SEO guidelines in place, starting to experiment with AdWords, starting to experiment with different messaging, starting to take social media sales seriously, taking care of customers, maybe doing some kind of customer events every now and then, etc. Right? And then as you hit your $1 million, you have to have your next strategy with marketing in place. And maybe if you do it right, maybe 70% of your $1 to $5 million revenue will come from marketing generated opportunities. And so, if you plan to start your marketing team after you've hit $1 million, you'll be a little too late in your $1 to $5 million journey. So you'll probably, delay that journey by 6 to 12 months if you don't have that team in place. So hiring the marketing head somewhere around $500,000 is a good strategy, so that the marketing head has enough time to have the first set of marketers ready by the time you hit your first $1 million.
Yeah, again, fantastic. I mean, I think up until now, it's the most ideas per minute I've heard in a while, right? So let's again break that down, right? I think few of the points that you mentioned are super important. One is founder-led sales, right? Founders are, again, especially engineering founders, feel that they can just outsource sales, right? I mean, hey, I'm going to get a salesperson who is probably sold for 15 or 20 years, and he's this great person or she's this great person with a great LinkedIn, and they're going to just magically transform my product into like paying customers, right? I mean, they're going to get these millions of dollars of revenue, but that's just heartbreak, right? I've never seen it work out where the founder hasn't sold the first 5-10 customers and just had the salesperson come in and then kill it, right? I've never ever seen that. I think so that founder-led sales, I think, is a very important point. And also, it's important because everything else is malleable, right? I mean, the product is malleable, the messaging is malleable, everything else is malleable. And who better than the founder to have perspective of that, right? I mean, they have the greatest perspective in terms of where they want to end up. So I think that founder led sales is super critical. And one of the things you mentioned also was a trigger, right? In terms of, hey, why are someone buying my product? And that is impossible to tell if you don't have paying customers, right? If you have a few friends or family using a product, that doesn't equate to someone who's dispassionate, someone who is who doesn't really care about you, really wanting and needing your product. So identifying the trigger is super important. And this sales head, right? I think, again, another very important point that you made is, when do I get a sales head? I get a sales head once I have 5 or 10 customers and I've sold it myself as a founder. And also, I have 2 or 3 SDRs or A's or whoever else who are also generating revenue, right? Basically, I've been able to transfer my knowledge into these SDRs and A's, and they've been able to sort of go out there in the market and generate some revenue as well. So the sales head will bring in all of those systems and processes and principles in place to sort of accelerate beyond that 0 to 1, basically. And finally, on the marketing team front, I think that is super important as well, which is, I think generally marketing is a force multiplier, right? Which is that if you have one or two or three or whatever, it can make it like 10 or 20, right? But it's very important to have those customers, and it's very important to have happy customers rather, right? So that marketing can go out there and kind of beat the drum about why you're awesome. So yeah, I mean, fantastically encapsulated in that very brief 2 to 4 minutes that you spoke about these things. Let's talk about enabling some of these folks, right? Because again, the way an SDR thinks, the way an AE thinks versus the way a marketing person thinks or a growth person thinks is kind of different, right? It's nuanced in some sense. Let's begin with SDRs. Right now, I'm a founder who's generated my first 10K or 20K in sales, right? I have a decent sort of a run rate going. How do I onboard my first SDR? What is important? First of all, I mean, how do I hire this person? What should I look for in this SDR, in my first SDR? How do I onboard this person? How do I train this person? And how do I enable this person to become successful?
Yeah, I think SDR is one of the trickiest hires for you because there are not many talented SDRs generated by India so far. I would be lying if I say that I know more than 20 or 30 in the market right now that are extremely good SDRs in the country. And the reason why that's happening right now, it might not be a problem after 2 to 3 years. The reason why it's happening today is because SDR as a function is very new, maybe only 3 or 4 or 5 years old. And most of those SDRs turned into account executives, ones who were pretty good, wanted to become account executives right away. And so this function is very tricky to hire for, right? Because all the good SDRs have already, become account executives. All the good SDRs who are still SDRs, existing companies will do everything to retain them and will not let them go, or would make them SDR managers, and they would have a team now. And you don't need a manager right now. You probably need someone who's more like a doer. And so it's very very tricky, to hire your first SDR. And again, a mistake that founders are doing right now is that they're trying to hire good SDRs only from the best SaaS companies out there. But the news is that all the best SaaS companies out there are retaining their best SDRs, so they're not up for grabs for you. So the ones that you will end up hiring will be a B or a C grade person in that team. And if you want an A plus, you probably have to build one. So by which I mean the easiest way to hire an SDR is to go out and hire a fresher who has extremely good communication skills and give your playbook that has been working out for you so far. Maybe put this SDR in touch with some other SDR leaders or sales leaders in the market. If you have some advisors on sales side of things or go to market side of things at large, great. Have them speak to your advisors, who can guide them into becoming better versions of themselves. But the one trait that is extremely important in India, if you're hiring SDRs who will be prospecting to, let's say, US or the West, they need to have excellent communication skills, which is not something that comes naturally to us, right? I mean, our first language is not English. And so if you check on that box, then other things can be handled, I would say. And if you could find someone who's creative in whatever he or she is doing, that is another blessing. So I think 80% of my sales team is into music. I don't know how we managed to do that. We never even asked that question in the interviews. But them being good at music, someone is a singer, someone is a guitarist, someone is a music producer, someone is a rapper. And what we realize is that we have a bunch of extremely creative people who would do anything and everything to get a meeting if they realize that this month is not going very well for them. And so, I would see my people recording songs, writing poems to their prospects. And you don't need to be an SDR for 10 years or 5 years of your life to record a song. You need to be passionate for what you're doing. You need to be talented with your creative side of things, and you need to be serious about hitting your numbers. And I think that can be achieved with a fresher as well, as long as the person is invested into your product and your company and your vision. So I think best way to hire first few SDRs is to go and hire freshers who have extremely good communication skills and are creative in their approach. Ask them to probably write. And I think a part of your question was, how do you evaluate if this is the right person? I think ask them to write a couple of cold emails for you, maybe write a small cold calling script for you, and maybe see their witty side, right? Tell them to make at least one of these 3 4 emails that they're sending you as a part of their campaign to be witty, and see, are you able to connect with the wit that they've added to their emails, right? And you'll be able to test what is the extremes to which they're going to get a meeting, and would you respond to that email if this email came to you? And if the answer to that is yes, then the experience doesn't really matter, especially being from another SaaS company doesn't really matter, and it's not even scalable for that matter. As I'm telling you, most SDRs were pretty good are not up for grabs. That is one function that you'll have to create in-house. Especially for Indians, it's extremely important that we realize that a lot of your SaaS talent, a lot of your SaaS GTM talent has to be created in-house, because only then can we scale this SaaS industry in India. If we keep poaching people from each other's company, then you're not building enough talent. And so everyone will face that situation wherein there's only limited talent available in the market. right? So make sure you're building talent in house.
I think that's a super important point as well, because I think good SDR, a good AE, a good growth person, right? They pay for themselves multiple times over, right? So why would any company let them go? Again, it sounds very difficult, but you'll have to build this in-house, right? Also, I mean, there's a lot of playbooks in SaaS and so on, but beyond certain general principles, I think that playbook has to be written from scratch for your particular company or product, right? So whoever you hire, even if they have that experience or whatever, they will still have to discover certain things from your product and market perspective. And it's been entirely my experience as well that freshers, really smart guys, have worked very well as SDRs. My most successful SDR right now is someone who had nothing to do with SaaS earlier. In fact, I mean, we've hired this person from an industry that we sell to, basically. Now the good thing is that they have that industry context. I mean, we sell to financial services. The guy has been a relationship manager in one of the large banks, so he understands who he is selling to. Basically, that's something to think about as well. So one of the first things that a founder has to do once we've hired this SDR or whoever else is to make this pitch repeatable, right? Talk about triggers, pitch, positioning, sales script, etc. Make it repeatable, make it scalable, right? Which means that, hey, I mean, here is a kick-ass script, go out and sell it, right? And irrespective of who that person is, basically. So it can be whoever it is, right? I mean, as we've just discussed, I mean, it's difficult to get the best of the best of the best people initially, right? So what are some do's and don'ts on the pitch and positioning side of things? Because I do notice that founders especially try to make this extremely complicated, right? Because again, if you're a product founder, then you want to talk about all the 50 things that your product does, whereas I mean, there could be only one thing that you should be talking about, right? Which is super urgent and super important for your prospect as such. So yeah, do's and don'ts on pitch and positioning.
Yeah, I think you are the first product marketer for your company, just like anyone else as a founder, and so you need to be sure that you're defining the pitch for your product, and that pitch is consistent for everyone across different teams. I've not spoken about customer success on this podcast so far, but I think it's very important that your account executives, SDRs, and customer success folks are speaking the same language. You should start hiring your customer success people somewhere around that 20-25 customer mark. So, very early in your journey, you should have the first couple of customer success managers onboarded, and you should maintain a ratio of around, 10 is to 1 in the beginning for customer success to customers, so that you get like enough, face time with your customers and your customer success managers. So you're actually in control of, what's going on there. And within the customer success, manager team, right, there needs to be multiple frameworks that are making sure that your CSMs are not under or over committing to your customers, right? So there's definitely a vision, there's definitely a product roadmap in place. Is your customer success team aware of that roadmap? Are they talking to your customers with a vision, with a 6 month vision, with a 3 month vision that your product has, or are they talking about things that you will never deliver, right? So either way, it's detrimental, right? If they're under committing, then you might lose customers for features that you were anyway building in the next 3 months. If they're over committing, then you'll have unhappy customers that think that you're lying all the time about things that you're building when you're not building. So I think from founder, it needs to start off with the marketing team, the SDRs. It needs to go all the way down to account executives, and then further the CSMs. And the pitch is nothing but the vision of the problem statement that you're solving. So there's a problem statement X that you're solving today, but your pitch could be a problem statement Y that you'll be solving 3 months or 6 months down the line. But then make sure that you're solving it within the stipulated timeline, because once you lose that trust with your customers, especially, right, with prospects, they come and go. If they don't buy a product today, it's okay. You can always try to pitch them again after 1 year with a much better product, and it's okay. But if, let's say, a customer becomes unhappy with the kind of vision that you were talking about in the beginning and it's not being delivered now, then there's no way that this customer will buy your product again. You wouldn't see a customer churning and then coming back again after 3 months, right? That happens very rarely. And so you need to take each customer very seriously, and you need to make sure that the pitch and the vision is delivered in the exact same way as your product team is promising on. And I think, because I'm talking about product teams, one thing that founders get wrong is that they don't give any targets to the product team. So every other team in the company, right, be it sales, marketing, customer success, everyone has a target oriented role. But product team is okay to miss a couple of features in a particular quarter and then move those features to the next quarter, and then do it in the next quarter. And so your overall product roadmap gets delayed because of the fact that you're still building Q1 features in Q3, because of the fact that you overestimated the engineering bandwidth or things like that. I think everyone's role should be kind of target oriented. I'm not sure why founders don't have variables for anyone outside of go to market teams. A little controversial in itself, but I think we should normalize the fact that a part of your compensation will be based on your performance. And so whatever you're doing, as long as you're delivering on promises that you made in the beginning of the quarter, you will get 100% of that component. Otherwise, you'll take a hit. And for those reasons, you might be able to make like 150% of that same component if you do exceedingly well in terms of your performance. So I think, if everyone is tied to the overall numbers that you're aiming for, be it your North Star metric or be it your, internal product roadmap goals, and everyone is, tied to those goals, and everyone is taking it extremely seriously, then you'll have a bunch of very happy customers. And it starts from, other departments, not go to market, right? But eventually go to market takes the, axe when customers are not happy because product features were not launched at the speed at which they were promised, and then customer success manager has to take all that heat and take a hit on his or her variable because of the fact that the product features were not launched, right? So I think I digressed a little bit on your question, but I also want to make this important point that the overall pitch is directly proportionate to your product roadmap's deliverability on time, and should you'll be a lot more confident with your pitch when you know that you're in complete control of your product roadmap.
I think again, very important point that you make, because see, in an ideal case, I think you'll be owning the customer for 3 to 5 to 10 years, perhaps, right? And you don't really end at one pitch and then they convert to a customer, right? I mean, one thing we know in SaaS is that there's a lot of money at the table, irrespective of what you close the deal at. Right. And so this whole land and expand thing is a reality, right? I mean, net retention is something that you measure, which is a dollar today is how much is it a year down the line. And customer success aligned to product, aligned to a growth motion is super super important, right? Otherwise, I mean, you have this case of having a leaky boat, and you will soon realize that the set of accounts that you can go after are very very finite, and for your SDRs and A's to go out and look for new prospects is super difficult compared to just growing your existing customers by 20, 30, or 40% every year. And that's unfair advantage, right? I mean, even if you look at some of the larger SaaS successes, right, whether it's a Dropbox or HubSpot or whatever, the thing that's been really really working well for them is that net retention, right? And that is because I think customer success and product is like very very well aligned. I think one of the most important things that a founder does while scaling their company, basically aligning OKRs, right? Picking that North Star metric and making sure that everyone is aligned to that North Star metric, because you have this weird case of otherwise people going in different directions, and then reining them back in is super difficult as well. So yeah, I mean, your product has to be aligned with your customer success, has to be aligned with your growth motion. Otherwise, I mean, it's going to break for sure. So let's talk about a template for sales execution, right? Which is that roughly, if I were to describe the lead to customer and beyond journey, right? My growth team runs a bunch of campaigns, right? Let's say, I mean, Google Ads or LinkedIn or whatever it is, I generate a lead. The SDR qualifies the lead, hands it off to the AE, or perhaps, I mean, takes it a little further, qualifies it further, and you have various templates, right? Whether it's Bant or whatever else. The AE closes it, and at some point during launch and so on, I mean, the customer success person gets involved, and everyone lives happily ever after, right? But basically, this whole template, right? What is the ideal template for this? I mean, at what point does an SDR hand over a lead to an AE? At what point does the customer success person get involved? And what are the various metrics that one should be cognizant of in this journey to make sure that everything is repeatable and everything is flowing in the right direction?
So, the disclaimer is that the template has to change at every stage of your company. But I'll talk about the template that works really well in 0 to 1 and then the $1 to $5 million journey. But I'll also talk about how, the template should slightly change after you cross that $5 million, mark, and now you have a different problem at hand. I think from a template standpoint, it's a blessing to be, inbound driven in terms of your approach, because outbound lead generation is not as easy as the founders might think in the beginning, that hey, what, I'll hire 10 SDRs and then they'll just give me 20 meetings per month, and I'll have 200 meetings coming to me in a month. It doesn't happen that way. First of all, you'll not be able to hire 10 SDRs, right? That's where the problem will start. And by the time you hire your sixth SDR, your first two SDRs would want to become account exec, and your third might be looking to become a SDR manager. So you will never have 10 working SDRs, right? It's not difficult, and it's not very easy to have like a 10-member SDR team to begin with. So if you want to start off with that to generate 200 meetings, not going to work out. And so you'll keep reiterating on what's not working. And, eventually I think you'll have to come back to an inbound motion. So what I'm trying to say is that, if you can, if your business model allows, and if you have means and ways to crack the inbound motion, try to do that early on in your journey. because that's going to be a blessing for you to grow, extremely well. So take your marketing very, very seriously. Have your marketing, have budgets assigned for your marketing. Have see where your leads can come from. For example, for Splintle, we could figure out that Google Ads is going to be like big for us because most of our competitors are pretty popular already and a lot of people search for them. So having like alternative campaigns would work out for us. SEO was big for us as well because, we're in a space wherein, a lot of people search for data that we already have on our, on our website for those companies. So like, for companies like Owler, for example, or for companies like Glassdoor, so, you can obviously have a very good, strong SEO kind of strategy. Similarly for companies like Slintle as well, you can have a great SEO strategy and have like a lot of company pages on your website. I think from that perspective, you need to realize if you have to be like events heavy or SEO heavy or SEM heavy or social heavy, right? A lot of companies, Gong, Chili Piper being like classic examples of companies that have taken their social media so seriously, and made a mark for themselves through social media campaigns that they run. I think you just need to figure out where is your customer gonna respond to you the most. Where is your customer, and just go there, and then have a lot of inbounds generated for your SDR, MDR team, whatever you want to call them. So let's and then the job of your MDR should be to qualify that lead at a very high level. So just to make sure that they're looking for the product that you sell, and they're not having expectations around something that you don't do at all. Just that high level of qualification. I'm not talking about any kind of band qualification or any of those frameworks that you see on the internet. Your SDRs don't need to do any of that qualification to begin with. You need to obviously take every lead very, very seriously. And so even if they don't have the budget, you don't want your SDR to disqualify it right away. Maybe you want to have a couple of conversations with them at an account executive level. As long as the expectation of what they want is possible to be satisfied by a product. So obviously, you can't be selling oranges to someone who's looking to buy almonds. So as long as they're here in the market to buy a fruit, and you know that you can sell a fruit to them, you can go ahead and have that conversation with your account executive. And from there, after that very high level of qualification has been done by the MDR and the meeting has been set up by the MDR as soon as the lead came in. Ideally, the turnaround time should be like 5 minutes for your MDR to reach out to that lead as soon as the lead has arrived. From there, it goes to the account executive. Account executive would go on and do that actual qualification, run a proper discovery. Again, in a proper playbook, right? A lot of companies miss adding a discovery call. They realize they feel that they can straight off go to the demo, start talking about their product, start talking about the product features, and tell them how awesome the product is. My playbook at every level, be it $0 revenue or be it like $100 million revenue, would always have a discovery call in the middle of the MDR qualification and the account executive demo. That discovery call is run by the account executive, and the call is to make sure that you know everything that you need to know to run a kick-ass demo, and that's it. That's how you plan your discovery call, because now you want to be sure that the demo is the only chance at which you'll either impress the prospect pretty well, or you'll just fall flat during that demo. So you have to make sure that you have all the answers for your demo with you while the discovery is happening. So depending on what you're selling, make sure that you can rehearse the demo based on the answers that you got of the discovery call, and you're so sure that no matter what, no objection will be thrown at me that I can't answer right in that demo. So you can be super prepared for your demo if you have had a great discovery, followed by a demo, followed by multiple rounds of trials, negotiations, and then eventually the closure, right? That's exactly how the AE cycle should run, and then it should be a proper handover from AE to CSM. Even if you're a very young company, so you should have that CSM in place, do that hand holding with the CSM, make sure that you're present on that hand holding call with the CSM, and then that this customer has someone to go back to every time he or she has a question around how to run the platform. So the CSM takes care of the customer from there.
Right. Again, more than a few important points that you made, and I want to talk about them. One is, I think, irrespective of what stage you're in and irrespective of what kind of market that you're serving, whether it's SMB or mid-market or enterprise, I think the North Star for every marketing team is to optimize for inbound, right? And when I say inbound, I mean more than just leads. I mean, I could even think about mentions, I could even think about reviews, and so on and so forth. So you have to optimize for that. I think that is the North Star of the North Star for any marketing function, right? Second thing is qualification versus disqualification, right? I mean, I see this mistake again that, hey, I mean, if you're getting 10 leads, you have to be in a qualification mode and not a disqualification mode. If you're getting 1,000 leads, I mean, then fine, right? I mean, then you want to sort of proportion your effort accordingly, right? On the 20% or 30% leads that really, really matter versus the 70 or 80%, that could be junk. And even there, right? I mean, I would say that you should not be handling as many leads, right? I mean, you should have a process in place, maybe like a junior SDR or a junior AE who'd be a lot more hungrier to kind kind of pick up those things and give their best shot, right? One of the best salespeople that I know used to have this, WhatsApp status that opportunity is manufactured, right? Which is exactly what you mentioned, right? Someone's looking for a fruit, you have an almond versus an orange. I mean, you figure what is the right way to serve them, right? Versus thinking that, it's almost order fulfillment, right? I mean, someone's waiting with a pile of cash for, just to hand over and start using your software immediately. And the third thing is on discovery. I think sales teams are almost too much in a hurry to sell, too keen to start a demo, too keen to start, talking about proposal and pricing and all of those things. But I think really, really, really good sales teams that I know of spend at least one or two calls really trying to understand the prospect, really trying to understand the problem statement, their goals, their vision, what they want to do, and then do one of the best demos that the prospect has ever seen, right? So I think that again is a super important point to keep in mind. So Anupreet, let's talk about sales tech. Right now, again, this is one of those things where there's a preponderance of sales technology, right? I mean, I remember 15 years back when I started out in sales, there was hardly anything, right? I mean, we barely used LinkedIn at that point of time. But today, I mean, there's all kinds of tools at every stage in the sales cycle. And I also feel that some of these stuff, right, I mean, it just makes people do dumb things faster, right? I mean, all of this automation and stuff like that, right? So I think it's really important to strategically align your sales tech stack to achieve the objectives that you want. To summarize, what are some of the principles that people should have in mind when they're building their sales tech stack?
I think extremely important that you invest in technology. I've been an engineer in my beginning of my career, and I realized the importance of automating stuff that you can automate. And you'll have a happier account executive SDR team. If you have enough sales tech tools in your kitty, because you don't expect them to do all of that manually. So one common mistake that I see people making is that they'll go for the cheaper CRM to begin with, and then move to Salesforce. A few quarters, few years down the line, and it's extremely difficult to move your CRM once you started using something else. But you do know that most of the other sales tech tools that you will probably onboard in the future will only integrate with Salesforce. And so having Salesforce as your CRM on day one is extremely important. So I think you need to get your CRM right and get a CRM that you will use forever, not a CRM that you'll probably change after 1 or 2 years once you raise your next round. And having the CRM right in the beginning, as soon as you hire your first account executive, I think that's when you should hire. Yeah, that's when you should buy your Salesforce as well, because you want each and every deal to then be recorded the way you want to record, and you should have reasons why a deal was lost, why a lead was disqualified, why did you win the deal, right, from a certain lead, and then start measuring your lead to op ratios, up to closure ratios, etc. Right, all of those metrics should already start. Your funnel should start showing up right from there, and you'll see that as a blessing once you reach that $1 million, because now you need to start making sense of how to get to $5 million. But if you didn't have your CRM all the way till $1 million, then you'll not be having any data to look back upon and understand how did you do it, right? And so taking the decisions that will be important right after you raise your Series A will be easier if you have your data sitting in your CRM. You just need to pull that funnel metric and understand, okay, looks like each AE is averaging around $30,000 per month, and for that we need to give them like 25 leads, and they convert like 10 of them into opportunities, and 3 of them close at a run rate of around $8,000 per deal. This is exactly that we need to do from $1 to $5 million, but we just need to 5x our leads, 5x our number of account executives, and we will be able to do that. Right. So, I mean, it becomes as easy as that. It becomes as easy as 1, 2, 3 when you have the right set of data sitting in your CRM, versus not having any idea on how did you get to the first $1 million, because you were trying to do too many things. And that just ties back to the narrow approach, because if a narrow approach helped you to get to a $1 million, you would realize that more often than not, the same ICP, the same geography can get to 5 as well. All you need to do is 5x the efforts that you were putting in. And now you have obviously 5x money sitting in your bank as well with the series that you've raised. I think you just need to, put that money in the right direction. And it is actually as easy as I'm, narrating right now. To go from 1 to 5. 0 to 1 is the most difficult journey. I think having the CRM is extremely important. On similar lines, I think you need to buy tools that help make your AESEA's job easier. There's a tool called Rattle that helps you integrate your Slack to your Salesforce, so your AEs and SDRs don't really have to go to Salesforce to update data. They can just do it through Rattle from within Slack. So every time a meeting is over, Slack would send you a notification saying that, hey, can you just enter some of these details for me? I'll go and publish Salesforce with this detail for you. So you'll see your AEs and SDRs would not hesitate updating Salesforce if the data that they need to be updated, needs to be pushed through a Slack notification versus going to Salesforce and updating the opportunity. Similarly, if you want, same tool Rattle can help your leadership get notifications on important op movements. So, for example, you want to notify your product team every time an op was lost because product as a product feature as a reason, right? You can just make sure that every time someone updates Salesforce as, hey, the lost reason product, blah blah blah, your head of product gets a notification right away saying that, hey, we lost a deal because of this reason. So product teams will not really log into Salesforce and find that data themselves. Might as well take that data to them. So these kind of tools help you a lot doing to do all of that. Then you obviously need to have like a sales intelligence tool that gives your BDR team, your outbound SDR team enough emails and phone numbers to work upon. And with the world going towards intent and personalization, I can probably speak for 1 hour on just buying intent as a topic. But I'll not do that. I'll spare the audience for today. But you need to realize that the world is moving towards lesser number of touch points or lesser number of leads being attacked, but more personalization. By which I mean, if you are still measuring your BDR on the total number of emails that they're sending, you're doing it wrong. You need to evaluate your BDRs or outbound SDRs on the total number of responses that they're getting. And those same 5 responses can happen from even 20 emails that they're sending in a day. But those 20 emails should be so personalized, so thought through. And the account list that they're sending these emails to should have some kind of intent of buying. So maybe they received the funding and you are a tool that usually is purchased by companies right after they receive funding. So then funding is a great buying intent signal for you. If let's say you are a great tool for companies that have just bought Salesforce, then that should be your buying intent. Then you should get a tool that helps you understand when someone buys Salesforce as a CRM in their organization, and your people are start writing to them right after they bought Salesforce, and so on and so forth. Right, there are multiple buying signals, multiple intent signals out there that you can leverage to make your SDR's life a lot easier, and you should invest in one for sure. Similarly, at around $1 million mark, you should start investing in a sales enablement product as well. There are some up and coming new sales enablement products like GTM Buddy coming up, which are very, very smart in the way they function. Kind of just in time enablement, wherein you're just writing an email and you want like a comparison chart attached to that email. You just pull up the Chrome extension and you like, the product is able to read what you're writing on the email and suggest the PDF that you should attach. So the product marketer's life is easy because all the content, all the PDFs that they're creating, all the comparison sheets that they're creating are being used as well. And lastly, I think a conversational intelligence product like Gong is extremely important because you're able to connect all the dots together and see what is leaky in your funnel by looking at a dashboard of Gong, which tells you that, hey, your AEs are not responding to emails on time. There are one too many prospects on the meeting. You need to get more people involved in the buying committee of these deals. That's when you become more successful. Your next call is not on your calendar. Those kind of dashboards are extremely important, and Gong does a really good job there. I think these are some of the most important tools, and then maybe mix it up with a Outplay or a Salesloft or an Outreach to enable your SDRs to send those emails through a cadence, right? I think those are some of the sales tech tools I think that are extremely important in the early sales.
Yeah, fantastic. I think we can do a separate podcast. It's in itself, right? Talking about how to align OKRs with some of this tech stuff. Now, the most important question that some of the founders are trying to answer is: can I sell from India to the US or Europe or wherever else, right? And I think that's the $1 million, or rather the $1 billion question, right? I mean, can I get this sales motion going? And I think we've gotten better, right? COVID has, been a help in that sense, right? It's been unfortunate in other ways, but I mean, at least in terms of like remote sales, COVID has been that inflection point, right? What are some of the nuances of selling from India to the US or India to Europe? Perhaps, I mean, let's just talk about India and US, right? So, what are some nuances of that?
Yeah, I think it is absolutely possible and it is absolutely scalable and it's already happening. Quite a few companies are already doing that very successfully. From checklist standpoint, you need to make sure your team is extremely good with their communication skills, as I mentioned earlier as well. You have the right set of experience behind you. So I think you need to have people that are good at selling from India to US in your team, because it's very different from selling to India from India, right? Selling to US from India is extremely different from selling from India to US. For a matter of fact, I've never sold from India to India. have always been selling from India to US. So if you really ask me to go and sell to India, I'll face a lot of challenges because the market dynamics are very different. Your deal is stuck at different levels in India versus in US. Your marketing approach has to be different in India than to US. So I think everything changes. And so having the right set of experience of people who sold from India to US is extremely important. And I think a lot of, again, founders do the mistake of hiring someone in US to crack India to US, which is not gonna work out because that person doesn't even know what salaries should we hire people from, what are the kind of expectations to have from people sitting in India. So I think if you have to sell from India to US, your leaders should be in India. But if you have to sell to US, regardless of whether your GTM team sits out of, then you can obviously have a VP sales in US even if you're an Indian founder. But then don't try to build a team in India. Just build that entire go-to-market function in US in that case, if you have your VP sales or your CRO sitting in US. But if you really plan to have India to US kind of strategy, which I already confirmed works, then you should have a leader sitting in India, build a team of leaders, first-year leaders that have already done India to US, and then the rest of your team could be brand new, but you have enough mentors in the team to guide them through the process. And I think having multiple trips to US and maybe longish trips to US is another thing that people underestimate. But as long as your people are not connected to how that country feels like, how do they speak, how do they talk, getting that experience hands on is extremely important. So try your best to help your team travel to that country, for like longish durations, like 1 or 2 months, 3 months at a stretch. So out of 1 year, maybe have them work out of US for 3 months, right, if it's possible. And then I think all of those things will just make sure that your people are like learning at a very, very fast pace, this entire motion of selling from India to US. Because I think for me personally, traveling to US multiple times really helped me learn more about the sports that they follow and the slangs that they use and the things that they connect to. So you have a lot of talking points on the call when you're able to establish that connect that is missing otherwise from an India to US kind of motion. The relationship selling that works really well from India to India can work from India to US as well, it's very difficult to form those relationships without knowing their culture really well and understanding what really flies with them versus what doesn't. But yeah, absolutely possible, and is a very, very efficient way to reach your first 10 million.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is grasping the cultural nuances, right? Because I think that also influences their buying behavior as well. And it's quite different from India to the US. And I will say that the buying behavior is a lot mature in the US. It kind of flows in a straight line, unlike a few other geographies, perhaps Southeast Asia, etc., which is a whole other ballgame. Hey, Anupreet, this has been a fascinating podcast. I mean, I could reflect on any of these things for, quite a while. And in fact, I think we should do a follow up sometime. But, to round things off, what are some books or podcasts or resources that you would suggest to folks who are listening to this podcast to understand more about sales and go to market and so on?
So I think from a book's perspective, one book that I really, really like is Transparency Sales by Todd Caponi. That's like a must read book for anyone in the account executive side of things. And another book I think which should be read regardless of what you're doing in the startup ecosystem is Good to Great. I think another a big fan of that book and should absolutely be read by anyone who's joining the startup ecosystem to understand what makes a company great versus getting stuck at the good stage, which I think most founders will end up getting to. How do you break through that and become great, right? That is something that is very clearly explained in the Good to Great book. So I think Transparency in Sales and Good to Great are two books that I would highly recommend. From a podcast perspective, I think this is one of the better podcasts that I follow, the Startup Operator. And so if you're following this, I think you're doing it right. There are not many great podcasts for SaaS operators out there, and this is one of the few ones that I really, really like. I think Naval Ravikant as a person is someone that I follow wherever he goes. So wherever he's speaking, just go and listen to his podcast. Great guy. I've already been following him. Great. Otherwise, wherever he goes and speaks, just go and listen to that podcast. I would say that's my second recommendation to you. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I think you're doing already good with following this podcast.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that validation. And like I mentioned, I think we should do a follow-up sometime. But this was awesome. Thanks again for making the time.
Sure. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this podcast, consider subscribing and leaving a review on your favorite platform. Also get updates delivered straight to your WhatsApp inbox by clicking on the link in the description.